Are you taking the SAT this weekend and are you wondering how should you cram because you have minimal time to try to up your score as much as possible? In this video, I'm going to talk to you guys about how to cram for the digital SAT. I'm going to get into data on which questions appear the most so that you can focus your energy on what's going to give you the highest payoff. My name is Brooke. I've been coaching the SAT for over a decade and a half. I've scored perfectly on a version of the SAT myself. I've helped coach students to perfect scores on the exam, and I have created an online prep course for the digital SAT. So I spend an inordinate amount of time studying it, understanding it. Let's get into this. If you are looking to up your score, you can also check out our website, SupertutorTV.com, where we have our online course with a free 5-day trial. We've also got tutors and blogs and lots of other resources there for you. You can also check us out on social. There is a blog that goes with this video. So if you want the rundown in text because you don't have 10 minutes to watch this video, be sure to check out the link in the description. We'll also link out to some of the resources I talk about. Number 1, download the Blue Book app and orient yourself. If you haven't yet, you're gonna have to use this Blue Book app, and you have to download that, and hopefully you maybe have already even taken a PSAT. So maybe you've already oriented yourself to all of these tools. If not, it is really critical that you learn how to use all of the on-screen tools before you show up on test day. You want to look at all these instructions. You want to read all the directions before test day. Make sure that you're familiar with them. The other thing that you want to be familiar with is 1, how to pull up the Desmos calculator, how to resize it. 2, this little reference sheet. So the other thing, when you're reviewing specific topics, make sure you also review this reference sheet. You should know how to do all of these kind of equations and what they mean. And this is what you get. So if there are any formulas that you need on your practice test that you don't see here, you need to memorize those. We also have a cheat sheet for the SAT math section that you can download totally for free. And we'll tell you more about how to get that in our blog that goes with this video. You can find the link to that blog in the description. Make sure that you know all of the shortcuts. If you want to use shortcuts, you can kind of learn those. You can also practice using things like the strikeout tool, how to annotate quickly. So that's a shortcut. Also, open and close calculator might be a shortcut that's useful, and mark for review. So Command-Shift-V, which is usually paste, that's how you mark something for review. So if you want to bookmark something quickly, you can do that. Annotate, Command-Option-A, and open and close calculator, Command-Option-C. Some of those might be good to know. Number 2, up your calculator game. Desmos, Desmos, Desmos. That is the word that I hear all the time in my tutoring community of what the biggest number 1 thing you have to know going into the digital SAT is. The digital SAT gives you access to Desmos. If you don't know what it is an on-screen calculator that you can find. It's totally free on the web. You can practice with it right now. So Desmos, how do you get to Desmos? Well, you go to desmos.com. and then /practice, and then you select choose assessment, and you're going to go to College Board, start practice, and you will get the exact same calculator that you get when you take the SAT on the Blue Book app. What can you do in Desmos? A lot of awesome things. I've already done a couple of videos where I share some of those feels like cheating kind of Desmos tips, so be sure to check those out. And above all, make sure that you, on a basic level, know how to graph, know how to use all of the functions that you use on your regular calculator. I would recommend, again, taking a practice test. And when you take that practice test, practice with Desmos, and that's going to help you too. The other thing I'll say about upping your calculator game is if you have a TI-84 calculator, there's also a way to leverage that, and that's with calculator programs. My favorite program is Finding Slope from 2 Points. We actually have a copy of that program we're happy to share with you, as well as some other calculator programs that I recommend you check out. You can find the link in the blog, and the blog link again is in the description. So we will link out to how you can get our calculator programs for free if you have a TI-84. It's an awesome way to basically do some problems without lifting a finger in your brain. It's super easy. It's a way to sort of do things faster and more efficiently and just prevent careless errors. So be sure to check that out. Number 3, take a practice test and review it. Number 1 practice material you should be using is official material from the College Board. It is the closest to the thing that you are going to see on test day, so that is what you want to practice with the most, as long as it's available. Granted, there are only 4 practice tests on the Blue Book app, so once you exhaust those, you've got to turn somewhere else. But that's the first place I would go. Take that practice test, go over it, which brings me to step 4. So step 4 is target the weak areas that your practice test identified. If you've got a little more than 2-3 hours after you review your test, which maybe takes another hour, another 2 hours, I want you to go in and review the types of questions that you are missing the most. And how do you know what types of questions those are? We have an online course, Blue Book Test number 1. You can cut and paste your results into our course, and we will tell you exactly what lessons you need to do because you missed items in those areas. So you can laser sharp focus your practice on exactly what you need and not on what you don't. Again, we have a 5-day free trial, SupertutorTV.com. You can import your College Board test results and figure that out. And then what I would do, if you've got, 3 hours to study on one day and maybe 2 hours to study the other night before, figure out what you're missing and learn it. I'm also going to give you right now a list of the highest yield areas to study because they show up most frequently on the exam. We did a data analysis of all of the questions that have been part of released Blue Book practice tests. And this is what we found statistically. The top math areas to study are algebra and advanced algebra. Okay, about 36% of questions are what I would call Algebra 1 and like basic Algebra 2 kind of questions. Maybe you do a little bit in Algebra 1 and then you extend that in Algebra 2. About 16% of questions are what they call Advanced Math or Algebra 2. And if you trigger the harder section in the adaptive test, you're going to get even more that are Algebra 2 in that balance, okay, more than that 16% by several percentage points. So these are the areas. Algebra is the number one stuff that I work on if people have very limited time. Some things that you need to know, get a pencil out, write this down, vertex form of a parabola. The circle equation, I know that's not algebra, but you also need to know that. You need to know how to deal with 1, 2, or multiple solutions to a system or a linear equation. A few other areas, if you have a little bit of extra time to cram, percents, rates, and ratios. Those are kind of my next go-to study areas for most students, because those kind of items tend to trip students up more than you would realize. Okay, moving on to reading and writing. Percentage-wise, what's going to be the most bang for your buck are 4 out of the 12 areas that are tested on the exam. Though there are 12 different subject areas, 4 of them make up over half of the questions on the test. So those are the 4 that I tell students to turn to first. The first one is words and context. Words and context make up about 19.34% of questions, and they come up frequently both if you trigger the hard section or if you trigger the easy section. So a good type of question to learn how to do. Now here's the catch. I know words and context sounds like, oh, it's just going to be vocabulary. I just need to study word lists. And while that's true for some students who are just missing the hardest couple of questions, a lot of words and context questions actually rely more on the idea of finding key words in the question stem and identifying transition and what I would call like trigger words, as well as double negatives, and sorting through the logic of those kind of question types. So it is a great question type to practice with, to try to learn, to try to dissect and figure out, even above and beyond learning vocabulary. I would say learn how to do that question type and tackle it. The second kind of question type that I want you to look at are called boundaries questions. This makes up about 12.46% of total questions and a greater percentage of hard questions. Boundaries questions deal with how do we make sentences and put them together, commas, colons, dashes, semicolons, punctuation. These come up a lot, and a lot of my students miss these questions. There are some tricky question types that come up in boundaries that you should be ready and prepared for. It's one of the easiest sections to prepare for in a limited amount of time. So another reason I love to prep for boundaries. The third section of question type that I want you to look at is command of evidence textual. These are some of the hardest questions on the exam. They make up about 9.18% of questions. So I want you to learn to map out your passage, practice this question type, make sure you understand how to anticipate the answer before you look to the possible answer choices. Finally, transitions. These are just plug in a transition word, however, although, things like that. They make up 8.85% of questions and appear across the easy and the hard sections. Again, you really want to learn how to identify keywords, how to look out for double negatives, these kind of things. Same kind of techniques as those words in context. So another good question type to try to tackle if you have a limited amount of study time. Number 5, my last tip for cramming for the SAT, snack it up and pack it up. There was a study done a while back on elementary school kids that had these kids eat a full breakfast in class right before a math test, and then they also gave the kids no snack or no meal before their math test, and they performed approximately 20% better, these kids, when they had food in their bellies. Food translates to better brain power. Easiest thing you can do to improve your score, eat. Make sure you bring a beverage, make sure you bring food, because there's nothing worse than having low blood sugar and trying to focus on some really hard second section algebra question at the end of the test. It's rough, man. In addition to snacks and a bag, like a backpack or something to carry those snacks in, I also recommend that you bring a printed admission ticket. You should print it out at least a day in advance, ideally before that. If you're watching this video and you haven't printed yours yet, stop, pause the video, go print yours out right now. The last SAT, there was a problem printing admission tickets and the College Board website was down for a lot of people's accounts for hours at a time. So do it in advance. Number 2, make sure you have Blue Book preloaded on your device and your device is 100% charged. Don't forget to charge your device and don't forget to bring your charger. In addition to that, I like to recommend that you bring a portable lithium-ion emergency charger if you happen to have one at your house. We'll put up some pictures of what those look like if you have a charger that is compatible with them. I have a USB-C charger on my computer, so I can use a USB-C cable from one of those emergency chargers. It trickle charges, it doesn't charge super fast, but if I am running low on battery and I'm on an airplane, that can give me an extra hour of power and that may be all you need. You have no idea what your testing center is going to be like in terms of charger accessibility. They may run out of plugs. So make sure you are ready. And that's another way just to, hedge your bets. Photo ID, driver's license, and passport are best. But if you don't have that, a student ID is usually acceptable if you're a US student, not if you're an international student. Pens or pencil for scratch work. For the first time ever, you can use pens on the SAT to do your scratch work. I don't know that I recommend it, but they will give you paper. You're not supposed to bring your own paper. They will give you the paper and then they collect the paper back because there's a limited amount of paper, so you can't sneak notes out, etc. But you can bring pens and pencils. A graphing calculator charged. Make sure your graphing calculator is charged. Load it up with some programs. Again, we have a video on how to load it up with programs, and we have free programs we're willing to share with you. Check out the blog for the link. And then finally, a couple of optional things. One, you can bring a watch. The watch is most useful for timing your break because you have this on-screen timer. So you really don't need it for on-screen reasons. But if you have to go out in the hall to eat your snack because they won't let you eat in the room, you may need to time your break. Make sure that watch doesn't beep, by the way. And finally, a backup testing device. College Board recommends that you also bring a backup testing device. If you had one, don't freak out too much because obviously it's expensive. You're not going to go buy a second computer for this. But if your mom or dad has a laptop you can bring as a backup or an iPad, bring it, bring a charger, preload the Blue Book on there just in case, worst case scenario kind of situation. And bring the charger for that thing too and make sure it's fully charged. I hope you guys like this video. If so, please give it a thumbs up. Again, if you want an awesome resource to help you prep, we have 5 days totally free on our online course where we have mock practice tests in addition to the Blue Book tests, as well as a tool where you can take your Blue Book test results and then target exactly what you need to work on. So check that out at SupertutorTV.com. Private tutoring is also an option. We offer online, no matter where you are in the world. We can help you prepare for these exams. Cool. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.